Welcome to the BonsPodShow. I'm your host, Aranjay Bansal, and this week I have with me Mr. Prantik Mazumdar. He's the managing partner of Happy Marketers and has mentored more than 500 enterprises. He's also recognized as one of the top 50 marketers around the world. And in this week's episode, we'll be talking about startups, investments, and how you can grow. Feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And lastly, enjoy the episode. I think we should begin with the normal ground. I've understood that you are also passionate with sport of cricket, and me being an Indian, I'm a huge fan of cricket as well. So very quickly, I'd like to ask you the top three players that have inspired you in the past few years when you've seen cricket and followed it.
Maybe I'll start from number three because I think number one will be an easy guess. Number three, I think, would be Wasim Akram. I think when I was growing up, I aspired to be a bowler like him. I'm a left-hander.
Okay.
Obviously, couldn't reach even a tenth of or even a 1% of where he is. But I just love the fact how beautiful his action was and how he could deliver six different balls in an over, right? And were just lethal without a very long run-up and so fluent. Number two, I would say Virat Kohli. I just think as a sportsman, or I think not just as a sportsman actually, as a complete package, right? As a brand marketer, as a person, as a leader, I just think there are so many things to kind of like about the guy. Of course, the opinion is divided. There are a lot of people who would find him too aggressive. Maybe he's mellowed down a bit, but I just think what he's done in terms of setting the bar high, both in terms of process, fitness, and results, I think immaculate, right? And number one, undoubtedly, is Sachin for me. I would like to believe it's probably true for many people in my generation, at least. It's a litmus test, right? I'm sure in every cricket group today, there's a discussion of, is Kohli better or Sachin better, or et cetera, et cetera. For me, the simple litmus test is goosebumps. And it could be nostalgia. It could be, because someone I saw whilst growing up, someone who was of a similar generation, grew up in Maharashtra as well in India. I don't know what it is, but, even now when I was watching the Legend series, I mean, those straight drives and cover drives and some of those flicks, I mean, I just don't get that emotional high from any other batsman or sports person. So yeah, those are my top three. What about you?
I think for me, the top three would be the first one, of course, Dhoni. The second would be Kohli, and I think with the third one, I'm more interested with Rohit Sharma. And in this order, I just remember when you're saying the emotion that goes through you. I remember the 2019 ICC World Cup. I just remember the New Zealand match. It, I mean, I was screaming on top of my lungs when Dhoni got out. That was the like what
No,
happened.
I
Yeah.
was fortunate to be, well, I don't know, fortunate or unfortunate, but to be on the ground that day. And I can tell you
Ah.
I still remember so I was probably, when Dhoni was batting, I was probably sitting somewhere at, maybe deep on the cover side. And there was a six that he hit, a flat six in the
Yeah.
offside, with
Hmm.
so much hope apart from what Jadeja was doing on the other
Hmm.
end. But that Kaptil throw, the whole stadium, you could feel a thud, right? Because this is day two of the one-day match. And chances are, if it had ended on day one, we might have won, and who knows, we might have won the World Cup. So yeah, get what you mean.
I think this is just a topic when like people start talking about cricket, it's a never-ending topic. You can just keep going on and keep talking about it. And with that said, let me just start off by talking about your journey. You've trained over 500 plus enterprises. In 2015, you were recognized as the top most influential marketers in the world. So, talk to me about this entrepreneurial journey. How did it all start?
Yeah, if I look back, it was never part of the plan. I come from a very, normal middle class Indian family. I'm a Bengali. I grew up in Pune, went to Vincent's Boys High School, had a pretty good, fun, nice upbringing back in Pune. And then my family moved to Indonesia.
Hmm.
And in 96, when we moved, well, first things first, my cricketing, whatever dreams I had, that took a break.
Ah.
Indonesia was not as big in cricket. But of course, I had a good chance of studying in an international school there, playing cricket there, doing everything that I wanted. So my schooling life was, across India and Indonesia. But never ever did I have the exposure or the chance to kind of think about running a business, because I don't necessarily come from a family that has business in its roots. Although there have been there have been one-off cases in the larger extended family where someone's run a business. Even when I came to NUS in Singapore in 2001 to study computer engineering, that was never part of the plan. Back then the whole IT services movement was pretty big. So if you had asked me back then, my goal would have been to get into an Accenture, a Wipro, a TCS or the
Hmm.
likes.
Hmm.
But somewhere down the road, in I think year 3 in university, I think fair to say in hindsight, I think that's where the seeds were sown. I was lucky to be part of this initiative by my university, NUS. As in Singapore with most things, a lot of things are top down, right? Government
Hmm.
led. So there was
Yeah.
one government initiative with the universities to start this program called technopreneurship. So whilst we were doing our major in computer engineering, there was a minor in technopreneurship, 6 courses, but very refreshing for an engineering bent mind like mine, where you studied product development, you studied marketing, you talked about business development and sales,
Hmm.
and that was fascinating. So to me, I think that was probably the first time, and I remember there was a particular book, 25 Lessons on Entrepreneurship, that I read, and so that's the first time I thought, wow, this is actually possible, that I could actually build a career. And of course, had you asked me back then, I would have said, okay, you know what, let me get some experience in the corporate career, and then I'll think about it. And as with that mindset, so that course definitely helped me with the exposure. But I started my career, in the Singapore government, in the civil service, right? But again, I think if I look at 20 years, I started as a civil servant for 3 years. I worked with 2 SMEs for about 4 years as a business development or a sales rep. And then Happy Marketer happened by chance because one of my closest friends and business partners and classmate from NUS, he invited me to join the company that he had started. And,
Hmm.
and thereafter, whatever other roles that I've led as advisor, we'll talk about it. The common thread has been there's always been a connection with the startup ecosystem, because even in the government side,
Right.
my role was to help local startups internationalize. As an SME, I was on the startup side, just that it wasn't mine, but I
Hmm.
was helping it scale and grow from a sales perspective. So yeah, that's how the seeds were sown in university. Luck was good. I think Singapore, my timing was good. I was fortunate to have a PR right when I stepped out of NUS. So a lot of things fell into place. But I think, to become what eventually turned into Happy Marketer, that opportunity was by chance. And again, right, as with most things in life, you never know, as what Steve Jobs famously said, where the dots will connect, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of credit to my friend Rachit, who kind of saw the potential and invited me, and I suppose the rest is history.
Right. I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs, initially they follow a passion, or I think for Indians as well, like initially they're going in engineering, and all of a sudden you can say life happens, and then they just take a change to what they really to what they really love. So do you think, like, for a lot of entrepreneurs, if you have a passion towards it, it would automatically come in the picture? Do you believe in that, or do you think that there is some other game to it?
No, I'm a definite believer in serendipity, but I also believe that serendipity works out. Again, it's probably a bit philosophical, but I think in my experience of 20 years, it works out if you kind of at least are open-minded. You give life to be serendipitous. You will give life a chance to make you lucky. So you need to be open to learning things. You need to be open to meeting new people. You need to be open to new ideas and conversations, right? I think one of the things I tell my colleagues or some of the startups I work with is one of the biggest risks today, and especially I think coming from the Indian or the Asian mindset, is boxing ourselves. Either
Exactly.
boxing ourselves that I'm an accountant or I'm an engineer, right? I think that era has gone. Or boxing your path that, oh, I must do engineering, then an MBA right after, or at best after 2 years, right? Every Indian family would have had that dinner table conversation. And I
Can
think
agree.
that is boxed. I think I'm sure in our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, obviously it was a very different ecosystem and era, and that probably had its place. But in today's world, if you do that, you then don't give life a chance for luck to kind of play in your favor.
Right. And then talk to me about the instance or that moment when you shifted your career path as working for a company and then starting Happy Marketers. What was that like? What was that shift?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I very clearly remember this is May 2011, where I was in transition from one of the companies where I was heading sales. So Pinstorm was the company, and a very early stage digital marketing company out of India. I was heading sales in Singapore with a very nice, enthusiastic 4 or 5 member team in Singapore. But the company was running into some sort of challenges, and I decided it's time to look out. And truth be told, I was actually in the final stages of interviews with Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's when Rachit happened to invite me for a meeting. I remember meeting him, and he said, "Look, you're doing digital marketing. You've run this for a digital startup. Sure, we have an opportunity with Facebook, LinkedIn. See how it goes. But why don't you consider this, joining hands and doing this together?" So the reality is that Happy Marketer, officially started in 2009. So 2 years before this conversation, it was started by Rachit and another gentleman called Dave Liam. And honestly, what people don't see is the hard work of Rachit. So Rachit and I are classmates from day one in 2001 in Singapore, right? So he did the same degree as me from the same school. But apart from the minor in technopreneurship, he also had the opportunity to go for the next level, which is called the NUS Overseas College. Now, in fact, now if you study NUS Overseas College, it's been a massive success. So whether you read about Pat Snap, which became a unicorn as of last week, he's from the NOC badge, 99.co, NOC. And you'll find many, many such success stories. So the program's kind of taken 10, 15 years to kind of bear fruit, but you'll see a lot of successful founders coming from that, including Rachit. So Rachit, after he was exposed to that program, he was my only friend in my friend circle in NUS who said, "Look, I'm not going to go
Chase
back to a
that.
day job,
Yeah.
career dream." And it's fascinating now when I look back that for the first 4 years, right, 2005 to 2009, before Happy Marketer was born officially, he actually really did the grunt work, the real hustle. He did whatever it took, right from logo design to website design to whatever it took to kind of pay the bills and keep that dream alive. Had that not happened, Happy Marketer would obviously not have happened, right? So it's those 4 years below the what is not visible to the public. I think that's where the foundations of Happy Marketer were laid. Then Dave and Rachit started it and ran it successfully for 2 years. And then I joined as the third partner in November 2011. So I joined as a third partner. I had some sweat equity to earn. And and I think we had, my favorite memories would be between the period of 2011 November to 2014, 2015, where we really, really had to figure out how to kind of, go from a 3-member company to eventually becoming a 2-country company where we had about 20, 30 people. Today we have 60 people. Those initial years were fascinating because, of course, you had the freedom. Yet, to your question, it meant I obviously had to reject the path towards the large enterprises. Also meant I had to, go low on salary.
Or salary, yeah. When you say that you were in talks with LinkedIn and Facebook, because with this, I just really have a interesting thing to also talk about. I remember a few days back, I was speaking to my dad about it on running my own company or something like that, and he said it's better to first have that 9 to 5 job, get an exposure from one of the biggest companies, and then work towards it. And it just struck me when you said, how difficult was it to finally have the trust with with happy marketers as well, and have that trust with Rachit in saying that I can risk it, and how did you work towards that risk?
Yeah, I'll break it into 2 parts, right? It's the classic question of when's the right time to start.
Yeah.
To me, honestly, it's the time is when you have an itch for a long while, and or you have a conviction or an idea, right? To me, that's the time. It could be when you're 18, 15, 35, 50. In fact, there are many researchers out there which will show you that that generally, if dollar value or exit value is a metric of success, a lot of successful startups have founders 40 plus, 45 plus, right? But I think, to me, one needs to give oneself the time and the chance to fail, right? Because when you're starting, obviously the odds are against you. Stats would say that 1 out of 10 will succeed, which means if I look at Rachit, he had this conviction, not of an idea per se, but of the belief that he wants to be his own master, right? Master of his own time. So there's a philosophical conviction. Some people start when they have the conviction of a particular idea or a market, right? But whenever there's a conviction and an associated itch for a long while, to me, that's a very, very good time to get started, because you need time to fail. And I deliberately say time to fail because the odds are against you, right? And if you look at most startups that have succeeded, what they started with versus what they ended in terms of product solution offering will obviously look very different, right? So you need to give yourself time to pivot, time to fail, time to have co-founder issues. So I would like to say earlier the better, but only when that conviction and itch is there, right? So that's the first part to it as to when's the right
When's
time.
this right time?
Yeah, and when it comes to the sacrifices, etc., I think it's again right. Obviously, I would I have taken this path if I had a lot of financial responsibility, etc. Chances are maybe not, right? So of course, luck, fortune has a place, right? But again, it really boils down to the strength and the courage of that conviction, that are you willing to fail, and are you willing to give yourself the chance so that you may not regret later on in life. And I think in today's world we are blessed with the democratization of technology, with financing, etc., etc. There's a lot of support system, and touch wood, it will only improve. So every subsequent generation will only have it better, is my hope. I definitely had it way better than people who started 10, 20 years before I did. So I think when it comes to, if one doesn't have drastically difficult circumstances, to me, you got to give it a shot, because I think the ecosystem, the support system, the financing availability, etc., one has it, right?
Hmm.
Like I said, there's always a way to kind of crawl back to a day job. But I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea of, having X number of years of corporate experience. You know why? Simply because, again, of that cliche that after cocaine, the biggest drug is salary, right? And it only gets worse because has anyone ever told you or me that, oh, when I'm 40, I should get less money, right? The expectation is salary must increase 10, 20, 30% year on year. I don't know who said it and why. Irrespective of economic conditions, our expectations are such, because I suppose inflation plays a role if you get married, kids, etc., etc. So it only gets more difficult, right? So to me, the salary drug is a very difficult one to get out of, right? And I'm glad I got out of it when I was at whatever 4K a month, at a fairly all right,
Hmm.
comfortable salary guy back then. But it would have gotten difficult because the big companies, apart from that, obviously to retain you, they would give you travel perks, free massages, free food, etc. And it's hard to get out of it. And to me, the only way to get out of it is that courage of conviction and that itch, which tells you that, look, if you ask any of your friends in these big companies, after a while, they'll be like, dude,
We are
how
chasing
many free,
someone else's passion. We are
correct,
working
right?
towards someone else with, yeah.
Right? So is it really worth it, right? And how many free meals and free massages am I going to have anyway, right?
Yeah.
There comes a point. So of course, I'm not saying that people who have been in the large company can't. There are tons of great examples, of people who have done that. In fact, just yesterday I read about a very senior, seasoned Google. I think Googler who's been there, Caesar Sen Gupta, who's been there for 15 years. He's finally put down his papers and he wants to explore something. So I'm sure he'll figure something out. But I think you got to give yourself some part of your youth, simply because of age, just energy, lack of other social family responsibilities. It makes a difference in my experience.
Hmm. You've spoken about that itch. So let me ask that, how did investing and mentoring come in the picture? Was it post 2011 when you had the exit from Happy Marketers? What was that vision like? And you finally thought, let me work towards that now.
Yeah, good question. No, so I think, the itch or the contributions or the excitement about mentorship or helping other startups was actually there right from my IE Singapore government days.
Hmm.
Because my role was to work with and help startups, right? So literally my day job was to connect startups with other startups or investors, and give them government funding, take them for overseas trips, for business matching meetings. So I think after having done that for 3.5 years, that was in my blood. That, just the general, because I genuinely believe that, and I was just amazed that how progressive and productive and, forward looking and progressive the Singapore government is, right?
Yeah,
I've
absolutely. Hmm.
in India, Indonesia, there typically you would hear that you succeed despite the government, right? And here the argument is in fact, it probably sometimes goes the other way, where I used to tell my startups that, man, you guys are really spoiled. Your expectations are very unrealistic that the government's going to help you at every step. But I think so. It was, the whole mentorship thing was kind of ingrained there. In my next two roles, because it was sales and business development, that gave me the chance or the impetus to go out and network. So by nature, I think on the first 10 years of my career, my weeks have always been filled with meeting 4 to 5 new people or new companies or partners just for new conversation. That's my oxygen. I need to meet people. I need to discuss ideas. I need to have such sessions. So that was great. So if you see my calendar right from, I think, 2005, that novelty has to be there. That excitement and pace has to be there. Post the exit, I think what helped is three things. I think one is it gave me a bit of time. B, it gave me a bit of money to kind of invest. C, it gave me a bit of credibility because having been a founder who exited, I suppose kind of gave me that access and credibility that, you've been there, done that, maybe you could help us.
Adds up to
So that's
to the thing. Yeah.
kind of made it a bit more formal.
Right. And when you're meeting so many people, I want to ask that what is that one thing that you are noticing now with young adults, or like as people like to call the millennials or Gen Z? What is that one thing that you're noticing with when you're meeting with these entrepreneurs? Are they becoming, or do you see them as more fearless, or do you see them as more of like taking calculated risks like what you did?
No, I think the ones at least I meet, and there are, anyway, firstly, it's fascinating. I was looking at a study that every year there are about 100,000 new startups globally. And I see that in Singapore. I'm sure it's a way smaller number, but I think I'm really, really excited to see the volume of new entrepreneurs and startups from Singapore, India, Indonesia, Vietnam, the problems that they're trying to solve. What I'm seeing is confidence. They talked about conviction. I'm loving conviction, courage, and confidence that they're coming out with. Just the way they would speak to an investor, right? It's unapologetic. Not to say that they are arrogant. I'm saying they're very confident of where they are. They believe in it. Many of them, you could say they're naively aggressive or naively optimistic, but you need that as a founder. If I'm not optimistic about my idea or my solution being the best, it's going to be very, very hard. And I love to see that. I work with about 16 to 18 startups in the region. And most of these, I would say, most of these are probably below 35. There are some where the founder or founders are above 40, 45. But I just love the hunger, the conviction. Risk, again, they're fighting against odds. They're trying to maximize investments, etc. In fact, what I'm liking is on the other side is not just the founders, but the VC ecosystem, right? Or the investment ecosystem. I'm seeing, so the VC, Singapore has about 170 plus VCs, which is fabulous. But a lot of corporate folks who may not be able to start today for a number of reasons, they are willing to cut $10,000-$20,000 worth of angel investment checks, right? So they're pulling in money and saying, you know what, I can't start, but I can always support, right? So I'm very happy with the way the ecosystem in this part of the world, especially India, Indonesia, it's absolutely phenomenal. In fact, just this morning I saw Y Combinator's latest batch. 50% of the cohort is outside of the US for the first time. And India is the second largest country in terms of contributing startups. I think the Indian cohort is 43, up from about 20 last year, which is just tells you, right, that the enthusiasm, the funding, the ideation, the risk taking, the conviction, I think it's a great, great place to be.
Right. And how do you see the startup ecosystem post COVID-19? Because I think COVID-19 has been a time for a lot of entrepreneurs, even who've come down for this podcast, they say that it's a time to introspect. So how do you see it after COVID-19? Do you think that the numbers will rise and there's going to be a sudden change in this ecosystem after COVID?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think during COVID-19, I saw a lot of people starting up, which is not unusual. I've seen 3 cycles of crises from SARS to the global financial crisis to this one. Yeah. And, it's natural because obviously there's a lot of retrenchment or people have a lot more time to do things on the side perhaps. And, that becomes a good impetus, a good natural impetus or a force to get people to start. I think the answer to your question would also depend on geographical market as well as the industry. So what I'm seeing is, again, my general area of interest has been where tech is the common spine, but the solutions are in health tech, insure tech, B2B enterprise software, in education. And there, because of just natural scaling up of digital adoption and access to finance. Because you've also got to remember on the other side, last year, not too many deals happened. So
Hmm.
there's a dormant cash is sitting in the bank that needs to kind of, be invested in. So I think it's a good time that I see that, which started, the movement started probably second half of last year. And, I definitely see it, scaling up this year, where new people, new entrepreneurs, or past serial entrepreneurs are restarting, and there is money on the table if the idea is good, if the market size is good.
Hmm.
So I definitely see this movement happening for the next 2 to 3 years at least.
When you say when you say tech, do you think that in the after COVID-19, the tech industry particularly is going to see a huge rise in like valuations and getting the right profit? Because I've been following legal tech for a while now, and what I'm seeing over there is that the move to automation and automated contract work has now, many companies have understood it now, because you can't employ so many people, uh, people working from home and things like that. So how do you see it?
I think it was happening anyway, and I think the only two things that have changed is, uh, obviously COVID has kind of accelerated that movement. There's been more funding from both private and government sectors to kind of drive that adoption. Singapore is
Hmm.
a great case in point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think to your point, I think industries that are generally a bit more resistant to adopting tech, like healthcare, banking, legal, you will see a lot of interesting deals come your way, simply because of work from anywhere, work from home becoming usual, simply because of just adoption and people getting okay. Like a lot of my, so I have a big group of lawyer friends, and generally they would be and rightfully so, right? Because of confidentiality issues, because of various other security issues, they would have a lot more stringent due diligence questions. But
Hmm.
now, I think, is this a company called Relevance, or one of these companies which got recently, I think there's got massive funding from Silver Lake, the private equity company, right? And
Right.
and I think technology also evolves, right? Whether it's automated document filing, or whether it's compliance checking. In fact, there are a couple of Singapore legal startups which are offering law as a service, like software as a
Hmm.
service, right?
Hmm.
Because generally law firms, can be very expensive to hire. So for regular contractual work, maybe there are semi-automated services or bots out there that can help you, right? And I think, we're seeing this. Like for example, insurance is a fantastic industry, which I think took to this about 4 or 5 years ago, right? Lemonade, which went public last year. It's insane that how amazingly well people can access insurance through a chatbot platform or a digital platform like Lemonade. You could actually get your claim done in less than 10 seconds, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Singapore, I'm working with a couple of insurtech players where, they're solving for the problem that, no one wakes up in the morning to buy insurance. So how do you create engagement tools so that people, health and wellness engagement tools, which keep you and me engaged with that, through that insurance platform, to keep our, diet, sleep, health, etc. And in the back end, it gives them aggregated data to choose healthier cohorts. So I think it's a matter of time. In the next 4 or 5 years, you'll see insurance, banking, uh, law, healthcare progressively become very, very open to adopting technology across not just the whole marketing side, but the whole product side of it. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, I, for the first time, used a service called White Coat in Singapore.
Huh.
I had some skin allergy. In less than 15 minutes, I got a doctor appointment. I had my consultation. She prescribed the medicine. I got the medical certificate. And by evening 9:30, I had my medicines. 35 Sing dollars without going anywhere, no queuing, nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I can only imagine that there is genuine efficiency and effectiveness in, tech kind of uh, bringing a lot of value to these industries.
I think you can see Singapore as probably Wakanda. There's so much tech development in Singapore, from the airport to all the, and I think now after COVID-19, I remember this thing that was being developed, where they were putting robots in the parks, which would detect whether you're wearing a mask or not. uh, how do you think that the government in Singapore is really inspired in making the Smart Nation program, the Vivian Balakrishna motive, where they want the Smart Nation program? How does that come in the picture?
Yeah, I'll break it into two parts. I mean, my experience in Singapore has been for 20 years. But whatever little I've read about the country from, right from pre-independence to 65 and post 65, I mean, I think it stems from a couple of things. The fact that you only have, 5.5 to 6 million people eventually. It's a small country, extremely dense population. You have different socioeconomic groups. And the only way, and you don't have any natural resources apart from people, right? Even your water comes from your neighboring country, right?
Malaysia.
Your food is imported. There's no agriculture. So I think that is the core genesis, that to survive and to survive you need to excel and you need to be a champion. And I think it was the 6th death anniversary of Lee Kuan Yew yesterday, and I mean, it's insane that you have a combination of a leader like him who has the vision and the ability to execute at pace and at scale, right? A classic founder. He's your classic founder of a nation, right? So I'm not surprised that eventually Singapore has kind of given birth to so many interesting startups. Long story short, thereafter, in my 20 years, I've seen various iterations of the Smart Nation program. At one point, I think when I was in the government, there was Intelligent Island. There was the whole movement of, having every household with fiber internet. And look at it, right? Because the flip side is you can say Singapore is a small country, you can do it. But the point is, you can be small, but you can there are many small countries. So it needs a lot of political will. It needs a system that follows through. The civil service is absolutely exceptional. Look at it, right? Compared to the US, which is generally considered to be ahead technologically. I mean, South Korea and Singapore beat them hollow when it comes to core Wi-Fi broadband infrastructure. You and I have at least 1 Gbps to do what we're doing right now at home, right? So I think Singapore has always been forward-looking, and not just digital or media. You look at the green plan that they announced, right? It's always 10, 20 years ahead, that what do we need to do to reduce carbon emissions. Look at the way they're inviting Tesla to come here and get things started on that front. So I think as a nation, given that that need, that real desperate need to survive and excel with just limited resources, I think it's a fabulous place for R&D, for experimenting with tech. To your other question, I don't necessarily think or agree that Singapore, a lot of people say Singapore is a great place to pilot and invest in startups. To me, there I would take a slightly different lens, that for a startup to succeed, the problem that they're solving needs to have a couple of, or 2 or 3 fundamental fits, right? You obviously need a good founder product fit. You need a good product market fit, of course, but the market size of that problem, the addressable market size in itself, has to be large. And Singapore can never give you that. So you can always start here. Starting the business or operating a business in Singapore is relatively very easy. But you need to be solving for Indonesia, India, China, ASEAN, if not what back in the government we used to call born global. Your startup has to solve for a global problem, right? So to me, I think what we're likely to see is a lot of startups. I'm hoping they start, but they're solving a global problem or at least a regional problem. Or you will see, because of Singapore's amazing efficiency and tax residency status, you will see the likes of what the ByteDance is, or what even a Flipkart did, right? A lot of people don't realize that Flipkart is more a Singapore Indian company. So you will see Singapore resident companies, a lot of them kind of springing up as well, that service China, India, ASEAN.
Right. And coming down to the final few questions, you said that you've always moved with your career. I mean, starting from a job, then starting your company, and then right now you're working as an investor. So how do you keep growing? How do you keep evolving and open to this perspective of change? How do you do that? And what would you like to give as an advice to the young 20s on how they can evolve and keep learning?
Yeah. No, I think, I guess some of it is obviously rooted in philosophy that, change is bound to happen. The question is, are you going to be part of it, or, are you going to embrace it, or are you going to let it happen to you and then, react? So I think that I've always believed that. Also by nature, I suppose, there's always been this inner push or inner kind of itch, again, going back to the itch that, I need something new or exciting to kind of keep me going, right? Just the kind of person I am. But I think it stems from just that fear of mediocrity or fear of stagnating, right? To me, fear is a great driver motivator. To me, there are also so many excellent, role models and idols out there, right? Trailblazers who have done this before me. So it's not something new that I'm doing. So I think I seek a lot of inspiration from them. There's fear that's driving. There's also the fact that the fact that you're in Singapore, the bar is high. You've got to kind of
You have to
stay
push.
up. How to always do well. We learn this, right? No, it's the same Singapore, what they call the Kiasu
Yes,
mentality.
you've been.
You want to
I was about to say that.
to take it in a positive stride and do that. And today, of course, as a father, as a young father, the thing is also about what's the kind of world or role you want to play for my son in this case, right? What's the kind of bar you want to set, because obviously he will kind of emulate what I do, right? I mean, he doesn't have to follow the path, hope he never does, but he'll learn from what I do or the mistakes I make. So that's a core driver for me, to be honest. Apart from, of course, I wouldn't lie, there is always the uh, element of commercial success, right? So a good friend of ours always used to say that we typically work for fun, fame, or fortune, right? So to me, at least two of those have to align. That what I'm doing has to kind of give me excitement on a daily basis. I need to wake up to want to do something different, exciting, right? If that's not there, the fortune and fame will not follow, according to me, right?
Hmm.
That's the kind of framework that I think about. So to me, any of the young folks that I say, I'll just tell them two or three things. Is one is uh, be open and be curious. Like going back to the same notion that be open to ideas, people, conversations. Don't box yourself. Just I have this philosophy internally for my company is surround yourself with goodness, and this is right from the people you surround yourself with, right to the podcasts you listen, right to the email newsletters or the Facebook pages you follow, right? If you surround yourself deliberately with whatever you think, right, is good, to me, eventually the dots will connect, right? That will kind of fuel whatever inner DNA passion that you have, and you will find your way, right?
Hmm.
So be open, curious, surround yourself with goodness. And the last thing that I tell them very, very passionately is the fact that uh, it's important to, and this could be debatable, but in my view, it's important to be a polymath and not a generalist. In fact, just last week, there were two very good articles in the Observer and the Atlantic, which spoke about, you think of any famous person, whether from Elon Musk today or Jobs to Aristotle in the past or Newton,
Hmm.
everyone was polymath. And polymath meaning completely diametrical opposite interests, right? Aristotle was into arts and math, someone was into music and insurance. That was the Atlantic story. And I think the reason is because you again need to, as humans, when we are living life, we're not born to be an accountant. No one said
Hmm.
you have to, right? On a daily basis, you got to be a father, you got
Hmm.
to manage your calendar, you got to manage your finances. You have to, by definition, do a lot of things. So to me, in our organization, what we start with is something called a T-shaped personality. So you need to have a breadth, and you need to choose one or two anchors of depth, right? Now that's within, let's say, our company, Happy Marketer, that within digital, maybe you go deep into analytics, but you need to still have a good breadth of the world of marketing. You can't say I'm only a
Restricted
Python
to.
guy.
Hmm.
You can be a champion, the best in it, but you can also have an overview. And to
Hmm.
me, it eventually extends to an M or a W, where you could have various depths, but a much broader breadth, right? So don't rob yourself of the opportunity of learning and being exposed to so many different things in life just because of a degree that you did in college or just because of path you chose.
Right. I think with that said, we've come down to the end of the podcast, and I should say that I really enjoyed the conversation, and it's been a really good insight for me as well in learning more about the industry, and also developing a perspective on how keep pushing and keep growing. Thank you so much, Prantik, for joining me this morning.
So much, Aranjay. Have a great one and all the best for the podcast series. And yeah, if and when you're looking to start your business, we should talk.
Definitely. Thank you so much. If you like this episode, please subscribe to my channel. You can also hear it on other audio platforms. The links are in the bio. And once again, to all the listeners, I'd like to thank them, and I hope to see you again for this BonsPod show.